Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we are back here today with another edition of Budget Magic. By popular demand, we are playing Modern this week. I know we had a big string of standard decks in a row, and I wanted there to be a big string of decks in a row because Battle for Zendikar Standard is pretty expensive, and I wanted to put some options out there for players that don't want to spend $4, $5, $7, $8, $1,000 on a deck, and we got a bunch out there now, and we will have more Battle for Zendikar decks in the future. But this week we're going with sort of a budget magic standby in Modern. This is a deck. This one isn't really mine. I made a couple changes to it, but Mono Green Aggro is one of the long-standing budget archetypes for the Modern format. As you can see, it comes in at $60 in paper, 17 ticks online. That price is fairly set in stone. You can do a few things to make it even more budget. Also, not a ton of things to do to upgrade it, but I will have a ultra budget and a non-budget list posted in the article on mtggoldfish.com. It's also linked in the comments, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. First off, the creature base. We are an aggro deck. All of our creatures cost 3 mana or less, and the basic idea is we want to get some threats on the board early, hopefully several of them, and beat our opponent down before they have a chance to stabilize, start countering our spells, kill all our spells, wipe away our board, etc. So we have 8 1-drops. We have 4 copies of Experiment 1. Experiment 1 is a 1/1 for 1 green. It has Evolve, so when a creature enters the battlefield that has more power or toughness than Experiment 1, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on Experiment 1. So when we play any other creature in our deck, actually, it becomes a 2/2, and then some creatures, if they have 3 power or 3 toughness, make it a 3/3. And then if we get 2 or more counters on it, we can remove 2 counters to regenerate Experiment 1. So that's our first 1-drop. Second 1-drop, Dryad Militant. It's a 2/1 for 1 hybrid green or white mana. In our deck, it's always green because we're mono green. It's basically just a beater, but it does have this ability where if an instant or sorcery would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, you exile it instead. So this is actually relevant against decks that have Snapcaster Mage, especially, against Storm decks even. So this is kind of this fringe graveyard hate card. If someone casts a Remand to counter one of our spells, if we have a Dryad Militant on the battlefield, that Remand isn't going to go in the graveyard for Snapcaster to flashback later. Instead, it'll get exiled. So those are our 1-drops. We really, really want to have one of those on turn 1. This deck, we can't really keep hands where we don't have early pressure. If our hand is good enough, we can keep a hand without a 1-drop, but it's really ideal to have a 1-drop in this deck. Then we have 3 different 2-drops. First off, Avatar of the Resolute. It is a 3/2 for 2 green mana, has Reach and Trample, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other creature with a +1/+1 counter that we control. As we talked about, Experiment 1 can have +1/+1 counters on it. So sometimes our Avatar of the Resolute comes in as a 4/3 because of that. And while we haven't talked about it yet, it's also possible to get counters on Strangleroot Geist due to its Undying ability. So that can also give Avatar of the Resolute a counter. Up next, Colonian Tusker. This one's pretty straightforward. It is a 3/3 vanilla creature for 2 green mana. It's just a beater. It's above the curve. It is what we would call a Watch Wolf. Watch Wolf was the original 3/3 for 2 mana. So, yeah, I mean, it's just another efficient threat that is green. Also, having 2 green mana symbols is a benefit for our deck, as you'll see in a minute when we talk about our spells. Strangleroot Geist, 2/1 for 2 green mana, has Haste and Undying. So whenever it dies, if it didn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, it comes back in with a +1/+1 counter on it. So we can use this to block with, or it can get hit by a lightning bolt, and it'll go to the graveyard and come back to the battlefield under our control, and instead of being a 2/1, it'll be a 3/2, and that's how sometimes it provides that counter for Avatar of the Resolute like we were talking about. Finally, another vanilla creature, the big boy, Leatherback Baloth. Leatherback Baloth, another vanilla one, 3 green mana, so green, 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 and you get a 4/5. So it is way above the curve for 3 mana. Of course, the mana cost is restrictive, so you can't just play it in any deck, but that is Siege Rhino stats, basically, for 3 mana. Pretty impressive, and all of our lands tap for green, so we're fine with that restriction. So that's our creature base. We have 24 different creatures. All of them are 4-ofs. All of them cost 3 or less. We need to have a couple of these creatures in our opening hand for it to really be keepable. Preferably a 1-drop and a 2-drop. But yeah, so don't keep a hand without pressure with this deck. We really need creatures on the battlefield for this to work. So, page 2, we have a few spells. The best spell, probably the most important spell in our deck, is Aspect of Hydra. Costs 1 green mana, it's an instant. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is your devotion to green. So we were just talking about all our double mana symbols. All of our 2-drops are double green 2-drops, have 2 green mana symbols. Leatherback Baloth has 3 green mana symbols, and our 1-drops also have green mana symbols. So Aspect of the Hydra is often giving our creatures +5/+5 or even +10/+10. This is how we finish the game. We can attack with a board full of creatures and a board full of green mana symbols on those creatures, wait to see what our opponent blocks, and then put Aspect of Hydra on an unblocked creature and usually take our opponent's life total down from a pretty high perch. We can often deal 10 damage or more with Aspect of Hydra in the middle turns of the game. Vines of the Vastwood, kind of the same. It is 1 green mana, but it has Kicker for another green. So for 1 green, you get basically target creature gains hexproof until end of turn. It can't be targeted by spells or abilities your opponents control. And then if you pay the Kicker, so for 2 green, it also gives that creature +4/+4. So this protects our creatures from removal, but it also is another pump spell, just like Aspect of Hydra. We can throw on an unblocked creature and take down our opponent's life total very quickly. A neat trick with Vines, too, is it doesn't say creature you control, so you can target an opponent's Deceiver, Exarch, or Pestermite with Vines of the Vastwood in response to Splinter Twin, and it basically makes it so the Splinter Twin fizzles, since it is our opponent that's targeting them, and it can't be targeted by spells or abilities our opponent controls. It isn't out to the Splinter Twin combo in our main deck. So keep that in mind in case it doesn't come up that much, but when it does, it's pretty sweet. Rancor, pretty sweet. Enchantment gives a creature +0/+2 and trample, so which is really key since none of our threats actually, well, I guess Avatar of the Resolute, but most of our threats aren't evasive, so they can get shut down by a bunch of Lingering Souls tokens or something. Rancor gives creature trample plus whenever it goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, it comes back to our hand. So as long as we initially get it to resolve, even if our creature trades off in combat, dies to a removal spell, we get that Rancor back, you get to put it on another creature. Finally, 3 Dismembers, the last non-land card in our deck. This, it's just a removal spell. We have to pay 1 colorless and 4 life for it, since we don't have black mana. And it gives a creature -5/-5 instant speed. This is just a way to make sure we can keep attacking. Like Tarmogoyf, for example, if that comes down on turn 2, that can stonewall our offense. Dismember is a way to get through that Goyf and keep attacking, kill our opponent before they can get their more powerful late game online. As for the mana base, really simple. 18 forests, as you can see on the far right. Also 3 Treetop Village, the best creature land for the deck. One of the best creature lands ever printed. So it comes into play tapped. You can tap it to add 1 green mana, and you can pay 1 and a green, and it becomes a 3/3 green ape creature with trample until end of turn, and it's still a land. So this is a nice little hedge against flooding out. It's a fairly powerful creature on its own. It works well with Rancor, because you can play the Rancor on it, attack. When the Rancor falls off at the end of turn, the Rancor comes back to your hand, so you can do it again. So it's just a really nice threat that doesn't cost us a creature slot in our deck. So that's the deck. As you can see, the sideboard. 2 Gut Shots, kills a Dark Confidant or a Delver. It's for 2 life, since we don't have red mana. You can pay Phyrexian mana for it. 2 Guttural Response. It is a hybrid red or green, and it counters a blue instant spell. No one expects Guttural Response, so it's a good gotcha card. Pithing Needle. This is kind of a catch-all answer to some really problematic things. Can come down proactively and stop a Ugin the Spirit Dragon and Oblivion Stone. Relic deals with any graveyard problems we might run into. Also can trim down a Tarmogoyf or neuter a Scavenging Ooze. Feed the Clan, way to gain some life against a burn deck. Usually we're faster than most decks in the format, but burn in specific, being able to gain an extra 5 or 10 life should be enough to swing the matchup. Unravel the Ether shuffles a artifact or enchantment into its owner's library. And 2 Creeping Corrosions. This one is basically the green Shatter Storm. Destroys all artifacts for 4 mana. Comes in against Affinity mostly. Also maybe some really fringe artifact strategies, but mostly it is a way to kind of get Affinity, which is another tough matchup. They are even faster than we are, and their creatures fly and ours don't. Anyway, I had pretty good success with this deck this week. Aggro was not my thing, so I might not have played it perfectly. I don't know. But we ended up 2-2 in matches. We should have been 3-1. Oh man. Yeah, we should have been 3-1. And also, the one match that didn't even feel close, we were playing against a pro, playing one of our worst matchups, and we just got killed in that one. But so I felt like we should have been 3-1. We got really unlucky to not be 3-1, but 2-2 is a respectable matchup. The deck's pretty fun. It's not really my thing. I'm not much of an aggro player, but if you enjoy aggro decks and are looking for a nice entry-level aggro deck for Modern, Mono Green's a great place to start. It's a little bit like Affinity or something. If you're someone who would enjoy playing Affinity but don't want to put out the money for Affinity, Mono Green is probably a decent substitute. And I think if you get good with this deck and really figure out the intricacies and the timing of when to play things, you can put up a decent record with it. Like, it does pop up from time to time on Magic Online, going 3-1 in a daily event or something. Haven't really seen results in big paper tournaments, but it is a competitive deck. And for $60, you really can't go wrong. It's a great price for something that you could legitimately take to an SCG Open and play and not be embarrassed by. Anyway, make sure to check out the article for this deck on mtggoldfish.com. It has the ultra budget version. It has a non-budget version. mtggoldfish.com is also where all my other articles are. Tons of great articles and content by different people. Decks, prices, a metagame, basically anything and everything you could want for Magic the Gathering. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel to stay up on all the latest and greatest. We got new stuff coming out all the time, so subscribe. It would be a huge favor for us if you would do that. And thank y'all for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.